AskReddit by Pappas Saturn. What's the most unexpectedly funny thing that's ever happened to you during a family gathering? My dad was trying to get whipped cream for his ice cream. We had one of those actual steel whipped cream dispensers you can put your own in or whatever. Something malfunctioned on it because while we were all sitting out in the living room we heard a loud shhhhhhh and my dad yell "Motherfucker," and when we all ran in we found the entire kitchen absolutely destroyed with whipped cream even on the ceiling. He was so pissed but we couldn't stop laughing, it was so fucking funny. Reminds me of the time I opened a can of tomato paste and it exploded all over the white kitchen. Looked like a massacre. My cousin walked in on our grandparents having sex, and when he went to tell his parents he walked in on them having sex. I hope therapists are cheap where you are. My grandmother had a jar full of M&amp, MS one Christmas. She told the family to write down their guesses as to how many M&amp, MS were in the jar. Closest guess wins a prize. Everyone gets their guesses and only to find out my grandmother had no idea how many M&amp, MS were in the jar. We laugh about it 25 years later. Whether or not she knew how many there were, what was stopping anybody from emptying the jar and counting them? Hosting brunch, was running the dishwasher post meal prep, started quite literally shooting flames out. So that was exciting. How? A ridiculous debate on whether taper candles should be lit briefly before a formal dinner so they aren't brand new and bourgeois as everyone sat for the meal. As everyone sounded off with serious opinions that grew in intensity, a family member who found the entire conversation growing contentious slapped the table and declared, "The Queen is not coming," and squelched the debate. It has become a catchphrase to quickly shut down a conversation, since "The Queen is not coming. I'm stealing this." When I was a child, our neighbor was known to be quite the recreational fisher with coveted secret spots. During a family BBQ I announced to everyone that she was going to show me her base hole. 45 years later this is what people remember about me. Should have come back with some fish and invited them all to go base to mouth with you. This was at a Thanksgiving party when I was around 8 or 9. I was down in the basement playing taboo with about 10 other people, including an aunt that had already had quite a bit to drink. My word is peacock, so I think about some phrases I've heard with peacock in them before and give my clue. She thinks she's all that, strutting around town like a. And my aunt yells at the top of her lungs, "Whore." Bahahaha. I was bending over to get a bowl out of the pantry when the belt loop to my pants caught the spout to the water container on the counter, then proceeded to dump water into the back of my pants. During Thanksgiving dinner one year, my 3-year-old nephew taped band-aids over his eyes and then locked himself in the bathroom. Then he flipped out. When we finally got the door open, we couldn't stop laughing. I can't see. Why not? I taped band-aids over my eyes. Take them off. No. The cat jumped on the table and stole the turkey right off the plate. It was like a scene from a cartoon. And the cat probably looked at you all like you were the crazy ones. We were visiting an elderly relative because she didn't get out much. After all, she was 95. We came in and her son tried to let us down gently, that she probably wasn't up for much visiting, though this was a planned visit. Very next thing, we heard this woman holler at the top of her lungs, "I ain't dead yet," as she proceeds to run out of the back room to greet us. Was absolutely wild to watch this 95-year-old, 95-pound woman practically run over my dad with her walker. She should put a card on her chest, like Granny Weatherwax. My brother brought a friend to Christmas dinner. When my father asked what he does for a living, he said, "I hunt Bigfoot." He was serious. Many funny questions followed. I also have many questions. For example, how do you make money off of that? Neighbor's giant hog got loose and went for a stroll down the road. He was chasing her down with a stick and she was holding up traffic. It was a fun show on a Thanksgiving day. I was lounging on the living room couch when my grandmother shouted a question from the garage. I yelled back my answer and continued scrolling on my phone. I swear to God she teleported because a split second later I hear from right behind me, "Hey Starlight, I W spooked out of my goddamn mind," I screamed. She screamed. We stared at each other for a total of 5 seconds before we both doubled over laughing. Still one of my favorite memories with her. My grandmother lived in a 1920 craftsman house with a gravity furnace in the basement. A gravity furnace is a throwback. It is a large furnace with giant ducts that go to every room in the house. It operates on the principle that hot air rises, and in this case it rises through the ducts and up through large grates into each room. They were horribly inefficient but bulletproof and operated soundlessly. So, Christmas dinner at Grandma's house. There were about a dozen family members around the table. During one of those conversational lulls that sometimes occurs, my uncle dropped one of those giant black olives. Each step of the way you could hear it as it bounced off his plate, rolled across the table, dropped onto the floor, rolled across the floor and directly into a furnace grate, and then down that metal duct all the way into the furnace. You probably had to be there, but in the moment it was the most hilarious thing on earth. Like Mousetrap. My grandma tried virtual reality for the first time and started dancing with the virtual dancers. She was so into it, she didn't realize we were all watching and joining in. That's adorable. This was at my maternal grandmother's funeral, at the cemetery waiting for everyone to show up prior to the actual burial. We were waiting on my uncle to show up because he had somehow gotten to the wrong cemetery, and it was cold and rainy. My dad went to huddle under another relative's umbrella, and ended up slipping on a slick granite gravestone and beefed it into the grass. The name on the gravestone? Klutz. Everyone got a good laugh out of it. I'm sure my grandma would have probably been laughing the hardest. My uncle, who's terrible at tech, somehow managed to change the language settings on his phone to Chinese. Watching him try to navigate it had everyone in stitches. When I was living in Japan, my dad changed the settings on Skype to Japanese because he thought it meant that it would translate everything. I had to talk him through setting it back. Okay, do you see a little character that looks like a box with a line over it? My grandmother's pants falling down to her ankles while she was carrying the turkey to the table for Christmas dinner. It was 40 years ago and I will never forget how hard everyone laughed. I feel bad for your grandma. Extended family get together for Christmas with all my aunts, uncles, cousins, grandmother, etc. My younger cousins are all close in age to my youngest brother and they were playing hide and seek around the house while the adults were chilling and talking. One of my cousins decided to hide in the guest bathroom shower. My uncle, not his dad, needed to use the bathroom and didn't think to check behind the closed shower curtain. He proceeds to take care of business. As he's sitting there, he hears a snicker behind the curtain. All we hear from the living room is, "What are you doing in here? I'm sorry, don't just stand there. Get out." Then a very bright red-faced cousin comes running out of the bathroom and disappears upstairs. My uncle eventually comes out and couldn't stop laughing. We bring it up all the time and it always gets a good laugh, even from my cousin. "Get out of here, you nosy little pervert, or I'm going to slap you silly Uncle Frank." Cousin's tube top decided to give up the ghost when she was reaching for something. First time in Florida and first time for me and my cousin swimming in the ocean. A wave breaks right on my cousin which removes her bikini top, which was never seen again. All of the little kids got dollar store dart guns from a family member dressed as Santa. My cousin, after a few drinks, shot a dart at my grandma's head from across the kitchen. Later, out of nowhere, while they were standing next to each other, she hits him square in the nuts. I haven't been to a family Christmas in years. I imagine they haven't changed much. My visiting from college sister's kitten dragged off a big hunk of a Christmas ham and snarled at us when we tried to take it back, and my sister wailed, "No, we're raising him to be a vegetarian." There was a talk after about the nutritional requirements of cats, and the little dude got on a normal cat diet after that. It also answered the mysterious walling of bags of bagels in the pantry over the last few days. Poor little thing thought bread was food. We bummed some wet and dry food from a neighbor since stores were closed for Christmas and took the ham prize away. My brother had a friend who had been yearning for an ascot. On Christmas afternoon he came barreling into our house to tell my brother, "I got my ascot for Christmas." In the short silence after Martin's declaration, my grandma asked with a straight face, "Did it hurt much?" Yearning for an ascot only reminds me of pining for the fjords. Not funny, but it was totally unexpected, and it happened during a family gathering. I don't remember it because I was only about a year old, but basically, I killed my grandfather. He had narcolepsy. This was in the 70s and I'm not sure how well he was medicated for it, but he would fall asleep all the time just randomly. I'm told he would be talking one second and sound asleep sitting in a chair the next. Anyway, at this particular event he apparently was bouncing me on his knee as you do, and suddenly dropped me. I was fine, and passed out. Everyone thought it was kinda funny because Grandpa fell asleep holding the baby, except Grandpa did not fall asleep. Grandpa had a massive heart attack while bouncing my fat baby ass on his knee. I got dropped when he died, I guess. Unexpectedly funny?